Did medieval knights always fight for honor? What about when love became a weapon and hearts were shattered alongside kingdoms? Get ready to uncover the chilling tales of rivalry from the medieval period, from roughly the 5th to the 15th century, where romance often led to ruin. Number 9. Diarmuid Ua Duibhne, vis Ewan mec Cumhaill, for Gráinne. Imagine a world where heroes were forged in the crucible of battle, but their greatest test came from the desires of their own hearts. In ancient Ireland, a legendary figure named Fionn mac Cumhaill, leader of the Fianna warriors, was a renowned chieftain, a wise leader, and a formidable warrior. He was aging, but his reputation was as sharp as any blade. Fionn decided it was time to take a new wife, and his gaze fell upon Gráinne, the daughter of King Cormac mac Airt. Gráinne was young, vibrant, and considered one of the most beautiful women in all of Ireland. A grand feast was arranged to celebrate their betrothal, bringing together the greatest heroes and nobles from across the land. It was a day of celebration, of political alliance, and of personal commitment. However, fate, or perhaps the mischievous hand of love, had other plans. Among the esteemed guests at the feast was Diarmuid Ua Duibhne, one of Fionn's most trusted and beloved warriors. Diarmuid was famed for his incredible prowess in battle, his chivalry, and a particular magical mark on his forehead, a spot of beauty, which made him irresistible to women. As Gráinne observed the men gathered, her eyes were drawn not to her betrothed, the aging Fionn, but to the handsome, youthful, and vibrant Diarmuid. She quickly realized that her heart yearned for a different path, one that diverged sharply from the destiny laid out for her. Seizing the opportunity during the feast, Gráinne made a bold and scandalous move. She poured a powerful sleeping potion into the drinks of Fionn and many of the warriors, ensuring they would be oblivious to her desperate plea. Then, approaching Diarmuid, she laid a solemn and unbreakable magical obligation upon him. This gaze commanded Diarmuid to elope with her, to protect her, and to never abandon her. A geis was a sacred bond, an oath that if broken would bring immense dishonor and ruin upon the individual. Diarmuid, horrified, initially resisted. He was loyal to Fionn, his leader, and understood the catastrophic implications of such an act. He tried to reason with Gráinne, explaining the profound betrayal and the deadly consequences that would surely follow. But Gráinne was resolute, her desire overwhelming her fear. Bound by the geis, Diarmuid had no choice but to agree, and so began their long, arduous flight. Fionn, upon waking to find his bride to be gone and his most trusted warrior missing, was consumed by a burning rage. He felt the sting of personal betrayal, the humiliation of a public affront, and the violation of his honor. He immediately dispatched his Fianna warriors, the very men Diarmuid had fought alongside for years, to hunt down the eloping pair. Chase was relentless, spanning years and traversing the length and breadth of Ireland. Diarmuid, with Gráinne by his side, displayed incredible ingenuity and bravery, constantly evading Fionn's relentless pursuit. They lived in hidden forts, in forests, and in remote caves, always one step ahead, always on the run. The legends tell of miraculous escapes, of Diarmuid's unparalleled skill in combat, and of the growing love between him and Gráinne forged in the fires of their shared peril. Despite the constant danger and the harshness of their nomadic life, their love deepened. Gráinne bore Diarmuid children, solidifying their bond. Eventually, after years of this desperate existence, high kings and powerful allies intervened. They pleaded with Fionn to forgive Diarmuid and Gráinne, arguing that enough suffering had occurred, and that the continued pursuit was bringing shame upon the Fianna. Reluctantly, and with a heart still harboring bitterness, Fionn eventually agreed to a truce. Diarmuid and Gráinne were allowed to settle down, to build a home, and to raise their family. It seemed for a time that the deadly rivalry had ended, replaced by an uneasy peace, but the old wounds festered. Aeon's anger never truly dissipated, and a deep-seated resentment lingered beneath the surface of his apparent forgiveness. Years later, an opportunity arose for Fionn to exact his vengeance subtly and cruelly. Diarmuid was invited on a boar hunt, a dangerous expedition organized by Fionn himself. During the hunt, Diarmuid was gored by a giant boar, a magical beast from the enchanted mountain of Benengolban. The wound was mortal, but it was not immediately fatal. Diarmuid's life could still be saved. The only cure, according to the legend, was for Fionn to cup water in his hands and allow Diarmuid to drink it. Enne, despite his legendary wisdom and healing powers, hesitated. He went to the spring, gathered the water, but then allowed it to trickle through his fingers twice. On his third attempt, he finally brought the water back, but it was too late. Diarmuid had died bleeding out from his wound. This act, or rather inaction, sealed Diarmuid's fate and showcased the true enduring deadliness of Fionn's rivalry. It was a vengeance executed not with a sword in open combat, but through a calculated, cold-hearted denial of life-saving aid. Gráinne was left a widow, her love tragically cut short by the lingering bitterness of a jealous rival. The legacy of Diarmuid and Gráinne is a powerful testament to the destructive force of forbidden love and the long memory of betrayal in the heart of a powerful man. Their story, preserved in the Fenian cycle of Irish mythology, passed down through centuries of oral tradition, and later written down in medieval manuscripts, recounts the epic love triangle that ended in sorrow, loss, and a hero's untimely demise. Number 8. Gawain, These Lancelot for Guinevere, and Kin's Vengeance. The court of King Arthur, Camelot, was supposed to be the pinnacle of chivalry, honor, and brotherhood. At its heart stood the Round Table, where the greatest knights swore allegiance to Arthur and to each other. Among these luminaries, Sir Lancelot was arguably the most celebrated, known for his unmatched skill in combat, his noble bearing, and his unwavering loyalty to his king. However, Lancelot harbored a secret, a profound and dangerous love for Queen Guinevere, Arthur's wife. This forbidden affair, whispered about in the shadows and hinted at in courtly poems, was a ticking time bomb at the very foundation of Camelot. Sir Gawain, on the other hand, was Arthur's nephew, one of the original and most respected knights of the Round Table. He was known for his courage, his unwavering loyalty to Arthur, and his fierce devotion to his family. Gawain was in many ways the embodiment of the Arthurian ideal, a champion of justice and a staunch defender of the realm. While Lancelot's affair with Guinevere was a scandal, it was initially a hidden wound within the court. Gawain, like many, may have suspected, but his bond with Arthur and his commitment to the Round Table meant he would not be the one to expose it without irrefutable proof. The inevitable exposure of Lancelot and Guinevere's affair was engineered by Mordred, Arthur's illegitimate son and a dark, ambitious figure who sought to dismantle the kingdom and seize the throne. Mordred, along with other knights who resented Lancelot's favored position or sought to undermine Arthur, set a trap. They ambushed Lancelot and Guinevere in the Queen's chambers, intending to catch them in the act and condemn them both. Lancelot, caught off guard, but ever the formidable warrior, fought his way out, killing several knights in the process. Among those knights killed in Lancelot's desperate escape were two of Gawain's younger brothers, Gareth and Gaheris. This was the moment the rivalry turned irrevocably deadly. For Gawain, the death of his brothers was not just a tragic accident. It was a profound personal affront, an act of unforgivable violence committed by a man who had already betrayed his king and the sacred bonds of the Round Table. Though Gareth and Gaheris had been unarmed and perhaps even unwilling participants in Mordred's scheme, Lancelot's hand had dealt the fatal blows. Gawain, consumed by grief and a burning desire for vengeance, became Lancelot's most relentless enemy. He demanded that Arthur pursue Lancelot despite the king's reluctance to wage war against his most loyal knight. Gawain's grief and fury were so intense that he swayed Arthur's court, forcing the king to declare war on Lancelot and his followers. This marked the beginning of the end for Camelot. The unified ideal of the Round Table, shattered, pitting knights against knights, former comrades against each other. Lancelot, seeking to avoid bloodshed and preserve what little was left of his honor, offered to return Guinevere to Arthur and withdraw from the kingdom. But Gawain would not relent. His demand was for Lancelot's death, a life for a life, an act of retribution for his slain brothers. The war ensued, with Arthur's forces besieging Lancelot's castle in Joyous Gard. During this conflict, Lancelot, ever reluctant to harm Arthur, repeatedly demonstrated his superior combat skills, but refused to kill the king. However, Lancelot and Gawain met in single combat, a duel of epic proportions. Gawain, empowered by a magical blessing that made him invincible for part of the day, fought with a fury born of vengeance. Yet Lancelot, though always fighting defensively, eventually outmaneuvered Gawain, striking him down. Lancelot, true to his chivalric code, spared Gawain's life, refusing to kill a disarmed opponent, even his sworn enemy. This act of mercy only intensified Gawain's shame and fueled his desire for a rematch. The war dragged on, tearing Arthur's kingdom apart. While Arthur and Lancelot were locked in their bitter conflict, Mordred seized the opportunity. He usurped the throne, claiming Guinevere for himself and plunging Britain into chaos. Arthur was forced to return to England to confront Mordred, but Gawain, severely wounded from his duel with Lancelot, succumbed to his injuries just before the final, devastating battle. On his deathbed, consumed by regrets and a chilling understanding of the ruin he had helped bring about, Gawain wrote to Lancelot, asking for his forgiveness and for his aid in defeating Mordred. The final battle between Arthur and Mordred at Cumhaill resulted in the deaths of both men and the utter collapse of the Arthurian ideal. Lancelot, arriving too late to save his king, mourned the destruction he had in part caused. He later became a hermit, living out his days in penance, haunted by the specter of his betrayal and the tragic loss of his friends and his kingdom. Gawain's relentless pursuit of vengeance, born from the initial romantic transgression, directly contributed to the downfall of Camelot, transforming a courtly affair into a deadly civil war that ultimately destroyed a legendary age. The vast body of Arthurian romances, especially the French Vulgate cycle that became so popular in the High Middle Ages, lays out the intricate tragedy, detailing how the rivalry born of love and loss brought an entire kingdom to its knees. Number 7. Palamedes, vs. Tristan, for Iseult. The saga of Tristan and Iseult is one of the most enduring and heartbreaking love stories of the medieval period, a tale woven with magic, betrayal, and relentless tragedy. At its core is the fated love between the Cornish knight Tristan and the Irish princess Iseult, who accidentally consume a love potion, binding their souls together in an unbreakable, dangerous bond. Iseult, however, was destined to marry King Mark of Cornwall, Tristan's uncle and sovereign. This created an immediate, desperate, and deadly love triangle. The story also features another key player, a rival whose own unrequited love brought even more complexity and danger to the already perilous situation. Sir Palamedes. Sir Palamedes was a Saracen knight, a formidable warrior, and a man of great honor and skill, though he was not Christian, setting him apart in the traditional European chivalric narratives. He entered the Arthurian world through the Tristan romances, often appearing at tournaments and courtly gatherings. It was at one such event that Palamedes first encountered Isolde. He was immediately captivated by her beauty, her grace, and her spirit. His admiration quickly deepened into a profound and passionate love, a love that was, unfortunately for him, entirely unrequited. Isolde's heart, bound by the powerful magic of the love potion and her own growing affection, belonged completely and irrevocably to Tristan. Palamedes was keenly aware of the secret love between Tristan and Isolde. He saw their glances, their stolen moments, and the undeniable connection that existed between them, a connection that excluded him entirely. This awareness, coupled with his own fervent desire for Isolde, fueled a bitter and often violent rivalry with Tristan. Palamedes was a knight who prided himself on his prowess, and to be denied the object of his affection, especially by a rival whose love was forbidden and destructive, was a deep personal wound. Their rivalry was often played out in the dramatic arena of medieval tournaments. These were not just sporting events, but intense competitions where knights sought glory, honor, and often the favor of ladies. Palamedes and Tristan, both exceptional warriors, frequently clashed on the tournament field. Their encounters were always intense, often brutal, and sometimes ended with one or the other gravely wounded. These battles were not just for the prize of the tournament. They were symbolic contests for Isolde's heart, though she herself could never truly be won by Palamedes. He sought to prove his superiority, to show himself as the more worthy knight, perhaps hoping that Isolde might one day see him in a different light, or at least that he could humiliate his rival. The rivalry escalated beyond mere jousts. Palamedes, driven by jealousy and a sense of injustice, sometimes acted as an informant, attempting to expose Tristan and Isolde's affair to King Mark. He sought to gain favor with Mark by revealing the illicit romance, hoping that if Tristan were removed from the picture, Isolde might eventually turn to him. These attempts, however, rarely succeeded in their ultimate goal, often leading to more convoluted escapes and dramatic confrontations between Tristan and Mark, but never bringing Isolde closer to Palamedes. One of the most defining aspects of their rivalry involved a legendary beast, the questing beast. Palamedes, in his pursuit of glory and perhaps seeking to prove his worth in a way that Tristan could not, vowed to hunt and capture the elusive questing beast, a creature whose cries resembled the sounds of a pack of hounds. This quest became a symbolic representation of his unfulfilled desires and his relentless, sometimes fruitless, efforts. While Tristan was tangled in the complexities of his forbidden love, Palamedes was often shown chasing this beast, a pursuit that mirrored his unrequited love for Isolde, a love he could never truly capture. The animosity between Tristan and Palamedes was intense and deeply personal. They fought not just as knights, but as desperate rivals in love. Their encounters were fueled by resentment, jealousy, and the ache of unattainable desire. Despite Palamedes' noble qualities and his undeniable skill, he was ultimately a tragic figure in the Tristan and Isolde saga. His love for Isolde was genuine, but it was overshadowed by the fated powerful bond between Tristan and Isolde, a bond that defied all conventional morality and societal norms. The rivalry between Palamedes and Tristan never quite culminated in a definitive, fatal duel between the two men. For Isolde, at least not in the same way other rivalries ended. However, the continuous tension, the constant threat of exposure, the repeated violent clashes, and the enduring bitterness they shared made their rivalry profoundly deadly to the peace and happiness of those involved. Palamedes' unrequited love kept him embroiled in the chaotic world of Tristan and Isolde, causing him immense suffering and driving him to actions that only brought more turmoil. In some versions of the legend, Palamedes eventually becomes a Christian and is baptized, perhaps finding some form of peace or solace outside the relentless pursuit of Isolde. Yet the persistent struggle for Isolde's affection, a struggle that was always doomed to fail for Palamedes, shankes the deadliness of a love that can never be reciprocated, a love that fuels endless conflict and personal anguish. 12th century poems by authors like Beroul and Thomas of Britain spun a tale that echoed across castles and courts, forever cementing Palamedes' place as the tormented rival. Number 6. Paolo Malatesta, B.S. Gianciotto Malatesta for Francesca da Rimini. This is a true story, or at least one deeply rooted in historical events and immortalized by one of the greatest poets of the medieval period, Dante Alighieri. It is a tale of arranged marriage, forbidden passion, and brutal, swift retribution. The setting is 13th century Italy, a land fractured by warring city-states and powerful noble families, where alliances were often sealed with strategic marriages, and love rarely factored into the equation. Francesca da Rimini was a noblewoman from the powerful da Polenta family of Ravenna. In an attempt to forge a political alliance between her family and the Malatesta family of Rimini, Francesca was betrothed to Gianciotto Malatesta, the deformed and stern son of the Lord of Rimini. Gianciotto was known for his physical disabilities, his harsh temper, and his formidable prowess in battle, but he was certainly not a figure of romance. The marriage was a matter of state, a pact for peace and power, not for personal happiness. However, the Malatesta family had another son, Gianciotto's younger brother, Paolo Malatesta. Paolo was everything Gianciotto was not: handsome, charming, refined, and a gifted poet. He was known as Paolo il Bello, Paolo the Handsome. It is said that Gianciotto, perhaps aware of his own unattractive appearance and the potential for Francesca's dismay, sent Paolo to act as his proxy during the marriage negotiations and the formal ceremony itself. The idea was to present a more appealing face of the Malatesta family to Francesca. This decision, however, proved to be a fatal miscalculation. Francesca, expecting to meet her intended husband, saw Paolo instead, believing him to be Gianciotto. She was immediately drawn to his charm and good looks. When the truth was revealed, the devastating blow of deception hit her hard. She was now married to the man she had not expected, a man who lacked the very qualities that had captivated her. Despite the shock and the reality of her marital bond, Francesca found herself irrevocably drawn to Paolo, the man she had mistakenly believed was her husband. Their clandestine love affair blossomed within the very household of Gianciotto. The two lovers, united by a bond that defied their societal obligations, found solace and passion in each other's arms. Their shared moments were filled with danger and exquisite longing. The renowned Italian poet Dante Alighieri immortalized their tragic story in his epic poem, The Inferno, a work that defined the early 14th century and continues to resonate today. In his poem, Dante encounters Francesca and Paolo in the second circle of hell, reserved for those who succumbed to lust. They are forever bound together, swept about by a relentless storm, a poignant symbol of their uncontrolled passion. Francesca tells Dante how their love was ignited, reading from a chivalric romance, the story of Lancelot and Guinevere. Ironically, another tale of forbidden love. She describes a moment when they were reading together about Lancelot's first kiss with Guinevere. As they read, their eyes met, their faces flushed, and in that shared moment of literary passion, Paolo kissed Francesca. It was a kiss that sealed their fate. That day we read no more, Francesca recounts to Dante. The affair, however, could not remain a secret forever. Gianciotto, despite his severity and the demands of his political life, began to suspect the truth. Perhaps servants gossiped, or perhaps he witnessed a lingering glance, a shared smile that spoke volumes. The exact manner of his discovery is lost to time, but his suspicions solidified into certainty. Gianciotto, a man of brutal efficiency and swift action, decided to confront his brother and his wife. One night, Gianciotto ambushed the lovers. The story goes that Paolo, attempting to escape, tripped over a loose floorboard. Gianciotto, enraged and feeling the profound sting of betrayal, plunged his sword into Paolo, killing him instantly. Francesca, seeing her beloved murdered before her eyes, threw herself in front of Paolo's dying body. In his fury, Gianciotto's sword, still wet with his brother's blood, pierced Francesca as well, killing her. The lovers died together, in each other's arms, in a horrific and bloody culmination of their forbidden romance. The double murder shocked the Italian noble families, even in an era of political violence and ruthless power struggles. Gianciotto, though he had avenged his honor, was left with the grim legacy of his actions. He had killed his own brother and his wife. The tale became a stark warning about the dangers of illicit love and the deadly consequences of betrayal within powerful families. Francesca and Paolo were buried together, a final, somber embrace in death that they were denied in life. Their story, recounted by Dante as one of the most poignant and tragic examples of lust leading to damnation, became a timeless symbol of passionate love that, when unchecked by societal bonds, can lead to absolute ruin and death for all involved. Number 5. Mordred Vs. King Arthur for Guinevere and the Crown. The legend of King Arthur, the shining beacon of Camelot, ultimately concludes in tragedy, and at the heart of its downfall lies a rivalry that combines political ambition, betrayal, and a sinister twist of forbidden desire. Mordred, often depicted as King Arthur's illegitimate son, or sometimes his nephew, is the architect of this destruction. He is usually portrayed as cunning, treacherous, and entirely devoid of the chivalric ideals that Arthur championed. While his primary goal was the crown of Britain, his claim to Queen Guinevere was a crucial, deadly component of his plot. King Arthur, the epitome of kingship, had created a realm of peace and justice, supported by the loyal knights of the Round Table. Guinevere, his queen, was a figure of beauty and grace, but her heart was famously given to Lancelot, Arthur's greatest knight. This affair, as explored earlier, was already a destabilizing force within Camelot. Mordred, with his keen eye for weakness and his relentless ambition, saw in this scandal the perfect leverage to shatter the kingdom and usurp his father's or uncle's throne. Mordred's strategy was not to woo Guinevere through romance, but to seize her as a symbol of his claim to the throne, and in some interpretations to exert ultimate dominion over Arthur's legacy. When the affair between Lancelot and Guinevere was exposed, leading to Arthur's pursuit of Lancelot and a devastating civil war on the continent, Mordred saw his chance. He swiftly moved to usurp the throne of Britain, declaring himself king and attempting to force Guinevere to marry him. This was a deliberate act of profound humiliation against Arthur, a move designed to legitimize his claim not just through power, but by taking what was symbolically Arthur's most cherished possession, his queen. Guinevere, trapped and horrified by Mordred's demands, showed her steadfast loyalty to Arthur in this moment of crisis. She resisted Mordred's advances, and in many versions of the legend, managed to escape his clutches, taking refuge in a convent. Her refusal to submit to Mordred further enraged him, but it also underscored the true nature of his desire for her. She was a prize, a symbol of his power and his complete overthrow of Arthur's reign, rather than a genuine romantic interest. Yet, his public claim on her served as a direct and deeply personal affront to Arthur, intertwining the battle for the kingdom with a profound marital and familial betrayal. Arthur, receiving news of Mordred's treachery and the attempted usurpation of his queen, immediately abandoned his campaign against Lancelot and rushed back to Britain. His kingdom was in chaos, his queen in danger, and his very lineage challenged by his treacherous son. The stage was set for the final, cataclysmic confrontation. This was not a war of rival kings for territory alone. It was a desperate struggle for the soul of Britain, intertwined with a brutal battle for honor and the ultimate betrayal of family and marital bonds. The final battle, known as the Battle of Camelot, is depicted as a scene of utter devastation on the battlefield. Arthur confronted Mordred directly. Chroniclers from the time report, and the later romances elaborate on the ferocity of this encounter. It was a duel not just of swords, but of destinies. Arthur, enraged by Mordred's treachery, struck a mortal blow against his son. But even in his dying moments, Mordred retaliated, delivering a fatal wound to Arthur. Both fell, and with them, the dream of Camelot. The immediate aftermath was catastrophic. The Round Table was utterly destroyed, its knights scattered or dead. Guinevere, learning of Arthur's death and Mordred's defeat, remained in the convent, living out her days in penance, forever haunted by the consequences of her actions and the collapse of the world she knew. Lancelot, arriving too late to aid Arthur, also retired to a religious life, heartbroken and burdened by grief. Mordred's deadly rivalry with Arthur, fueled by ambition and sealed by his brazen attempt to claim Guinevere and the throne, brought about the complete destruction of Arthur's kingdom. It was a rivalry that transcended mere power struggles, delving into the deepest personal betrayals imaginable. The Arthurian legends, compiled and retold throughout the medieval period, from the chronicles of Geoffrey of Monmouth to the epic cycles of the French Vulgate and Sir Thomas Malory's La Morte d'Art, paint a vivid and tragic picture of Howard and a symbolic conquest of his father's queen, brought about the collapse of an entire age of chivalry and honor. His actions show that sometimes the most dangerous romantic rival isn't one driven by love, but by cold, calculated ambition that uses love as a weapon. Number 4. Siegfried, vs. Gunther, for Brunhild. This is a tale of epic proportions, originating from Germanic heroic legend and magnificently captured in the 13th century German epic poem, the Nibelungenlied. It's a story of incredible strength, profound deception, and deadly revenge, all set against the backdrop of an arranged marriage that goes terribly, violently wrong. At its heart lies the mighty hero Siegfried, the powerful King Gunther, and the formidable Queen Brunhild, a woman whose pride and strength were unmatched. Siegfried, the hero of the Netherlands, was a figure of immense power and legendary deeds. He had slain a dragon, bathed in its blood to become invincible, and possessed the Nibelung treasure and the Tarnkappe, a cloak that granted invisibility and super strength. He was a hero without peer, but his heart belonged to Kriemhild, the beautiful sister of King Gunther of Burgundy. Siegfried traveled to Worms, Gunther's court, seeking Kriemhild's hand in marriage. King Gunther, however, had his own ambitious desires. He wished to marry the formidable Queen Brunhild of Iceland, a warrior queen of immense strength and pride who had set an almost impossible condition for her hand. Any suitor had to defeat her in a series of athletic contests, javelin throwing, stone tossing and jumping, or face death. Many had tried and failed, losing their lives in the attempt. Gunther knew he was no match for Brunhild's physical prowess alone. Gunther, seeing Siegfried's incredible strength and his desire for Kriemhild, struck a perilous bargain. He promised Siegfried Kriemhild's hand if Siegfried would help him win Brunhild. Siegfried, blinded by his love for Kriemhild, agreed to the dangerous deception. Plan was for Siegfried to use his invisibility cloak, the Tarnkappe, to secretly provide Gunther with the strength and skill needed to defeat Brunhild in the contests, and so the deception began. During the contests, as Brunhild unleashed her mighty javelin and hurled massive stones, it was Siegfried, invisible by Gunther's side, who provided the true strength, making it appear as though Gunther was performing these superhuman feats. Brunhild, astonished and defeated, had no choice but to accept Gunther as her husband, her pride wounded, but her word bound. She returned to Burgundy with Gunther, bringing her immense strength and deep-seated suspicion into the heart of the Nibelung court. The deception continued even into the bridal chamber. Brunhild, still unwilling to truly submit to Gunther and sensing something was amiss, resisted him with her incredible strength, binding him and hanging him from the rafters. Gunther, humiliated and helpless, once again turned to Siegfried. Siegfried, still invisible, entered the chamber and wrestled Brunhild into submission, taking a ring from her finger and her girdle as tokens of his victory, unknowingly setting the stage for future disaster. Brunhild, truly defeated, Siegfried married Kriemhild, and they had a son. Brunhild, now Gunther's queen, remained uneasy and deeply resentful of Siegfried's power and the perceived slights. The simmering resentment boiled over during a public argument between Brunhild and Kriemhild. Brunhild, still stinging from her humiliation, questioned why Kriemhild, whose husband was merely a vassal, should enjoy greater prestige than herself, the queen. Kriemhild, enraged by Brunhild's haughtiness, made a fatal mistake. To prove Siegfried's true status and her own perceived superiority, she revealed the long-held secret. It was Siegfried, not Gunther, who had truly defeated Brunhild and taken her maidenhead on their wedding night, presenting the ring and girdle as proof. This revelation shattered Brunhild's world. Her pride, her honor, and her dignity were utterly destroyed. She felt profoundly betrayed and humiliated, not just by Siegfried and Gunther, but by Kriemhild, her sister-in-law. Her love for Gunther, or at least her acceptance of him, turned to bitter hatred. She demanded vengeance, fiercely desiring Siegfried's death. Gunther, too, felt his honor irrevocably stained by the public exposure of his deception. His pride was wounded, and he feared Brunhild's wrath and the potential instability her anger might bring to his kingdom. Influenced by his powerful and treacherous vassal, Hagen, who was always looking for an opportunity to destroy Siegfried and seize his treasure, Gunther reluctantly agreed to Siegfried's murder. A hunting trip was arranged, a seemingly innocent excursion that became the stage for Siegfried's betrayal. Hagen, knowing the one vulnerable spot on Siegfried's otherwise invincible body, a spot on his back where a linden leaf had fallen during his dragon bloodbath, leaving it unprotected, lured Siegfried to a spring. As Siegfried stooped to drink, Hagen plunged a spear into his back, killing the mighty hero. Siegfried's murder unleashed a chain of deadly consequences. Kriemhild, utterly devastated by her husband's betrayal and death, became a vengeful widow. Her grief transformed into a relentless quest for retribution, especially against Hagen and Gunther. This quest eventually led to the destruction of the Nibelungs, a cataclysmic war that decimated Gunther's entire lineage and resulted in the deaths of thousands, including Gunther himself, killed by Kriemhild. The rivalry between Siegfried and Gunther, born of an elaborate deception to secure a marriage to the formidable Brunhild, ultimately led to the demise of one of the greatest heroes of legend, and later, the annihilation of an entire kingdom. The Germanic epic Nibelungenlied, a monumental work from the 13th century, tells of how this secret, a hidden truth about a forced marriage, festered and exploded, leaving behind a trail of deathless despair and an unforgettable legacy of treachery and vengeance. Number 3. Tristan vs. King Mark for Iseult. The legend of Tristan and Iseult is a cornerstone of medieval romance, a powerful and tragic tale of forbidden love, loyalty, and betrayal that captivated audiences for centuries. It features a deep, fated connection between a young knight and a queen, but it is also a story of a devastating rivalry with the very man to whom the queen is bound, King Mark of Cornwall, Tristan's uncle and sovereign. This is not just a tale of adultery. It is a profound exploration of destiny, honor, and the destructive power of a love beyond control. Tristan, a valiant and gifted knight, was the beloved nephew of King Mark. He was renowned for his skill in battle, his mastery of music, and his noble character. It was Tristan who undertook a perilous journey to Ireland to bring back Princess Iseult as a bride for his uncle King Mark, thus securing a lasting peace between Cornwall and Ireland. Iseult, known for her exquisite beauty and her knowledge of healing arts, was destined to become the Queen of Cornwall. The tragic turn of events occurred during the sea voyage from Ireland to Cornwall. Iseult's mother, a sorceress, had prepared a powerful love potion intended for Iseult and Mark to ensure their lasting love and a happy marriage. However, through a fateful mistake, Tristan and Iseult accidentally consumed the potion together. This was no ordinary drink. It was a magical concoction designed to bind two souls together in an unbreakable, passionate, and irresistible love. From that moment, their destinies were intertwined and their hearts belonged only to each other, despite the societal and familial bonds that dictated Iseult must marry Mark. Upon their arrival in Cornwall, Iseult married King Mark as planned. She became the queen. But her heart, along with Tristan's, yearned for a forbidden love. Their affair began, a dangerous dance of secrecy and stolen moments within the very court of King Mark. The lovers were consumed by a passion they could neither deny nor control, a bond forged by powerful magic that superseded all notions of duty, honor, and loyalty. King Mark, though initially unaware, began to suspect the illicit affair. His suspicions were often fueled by jealous courtiers who saw Tristan's favored position and the undeniable bond between him and Iseult. The rivalry between Mark and Tristan was unique because it involved a deep familial connection, uncle and nephew, which compounded the betrayal. Mark loved Tristan as a son, and Tristan's loyalty to his uncle was strong, even as his heart led him to betray that trust. This made Mark's pain and sense of betrayal all the more profound. The legend recounts numerous episodes where Mark discovered the affair or came close to it, leading to dramatic confrontations and perilous escapes for the lovers. Sometimes, Mark would banish Tristan, only for Tristan to return, compelled by his love for Iseult, or to offer his services in battle when the kingdom was threatened. At other times, Mark would attempt to punish Iseult, often through trials or condemnations, but Tristan would always find a way to intervene, proving his enduring devotion. The nature of their rivalry was not one of open, direct combat over Iseult. Instead, it was a constant agonizing dance of discovery, forgiveness, often temporary, and renewed betrayal. Mark, torn between his love for Iseult, his affection for Tristan, and his profound sense of violated honor, never truly brought himself to execute Tristan outright in many versions of the story, though he repeatedly sought to remove him from Iseult's presence or even trap him. Powerful magic of the love potion often serves as an explanation or even an excuse for the lovers' actions, making their betrayal less about choice and more about inescapable destiny. Despite their desperate attempts to conceal their love and Mark's conflicted feelings, the affair ultimately led to tragedy. In many versions, Tristan eventually leaves Cornwall, either banished by Mark or in despair over their impossible situation. He travels to Brittany, where he marries another Iseult of the White Hands, a woman who loves him deeply but can never truly capture his heart, which remains eternally bound to Iseult of Ireland. Tristan later suffers a mortal wound, often from a poisoned spear. He sends for Iseult of Ireland, believing that only she can heal him, just as she had healed him from previous wounds. The message was sent with a ship, which would fly a white sail if Iseult was coming, and a black sail if she was not. Tristan's wife, Iseult of the White Hands, consumed by jealousy and heartbroken by her husband's enduring love for another, sees the white sail approaching but tells Tristan that the sail is black. Believing that Iseult of Ireland has not come, Tristan dies of despair, his heart broken. Iseult of Ireland arrives shortly after, finds Tristan dead and dies of grief beside him. King Mark, arriving at the scene, finds both lovers dead. In some versions, he orders their burial together, or they are magically united in death, with a vine or tree growing from Tristan's grave to Isolt's, symbolizing their unbreakable bond. The rivalry with Mark, though not always leading to direct combat between the two men, is deadly in its consequences. It led to a life of deception and torment for Tristan and Isolt, constant suspicion and heartbreak for Mark, and ultimately, the tragic deaths of the two fated lovers. The story, as spun by 12th century poets like Beroul and Thomas of Britain, and retold countless times, remains a powerful testament to how a love triangle fueled by magic and betrayal can shatter lives and end in profound sorrow. Number 2. Paris. These, Menelaus, for Helen. This is a story that ignited one of the most famous and devastating wars in all of ancient and medieval legend, a conflict whose echoes reverberated through literature for thousands of years. Began not with a battle, but with a beauty contest and a fateful promise. Core of this epic conflict is the rivalry between Paris, a prince of Troy, and Menelaus, the king of Sparta, for the affections of Helen, a woman whose beauty was so legendary she became known as the face that launched 1,000 ships. The story begins with the judgment of Paris. At a divine wedding, the goddess Eris, angry at not being invited, threw a golden apple inscribed "To the fairest." 3 powerful goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, immediately claimed it. Zeus, unwilling to choose and incur the wrath of 2 goddesses, appointed Paris, a mortal prince of Troy, as the judge. Each goddess offered Paris a bribe. Athena offered wisdom and victory in battle. Aphrodite, however, offered him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Helen, Paris, swayed by the promise of ultimate beauty and love, chose Aphrodite, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to unimaginable bloodshed. Helen was no ordinary woman. She was the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta, a powerful and respected Greek king. She was also widely considered the most beautiful woman in the world, a daughter of Zeus, a demi-goddess in her own right. Paris, under Aphrodite's influence and driven by his newfound desire, traveled to Sparta. He was received as a guest in Menelaus's court, an act of hospitality that he would soon betray in the most profound way. While Menelaus was away on a diplomatic mission, Paris, with Aphrodite's help, seduced Helen. The exact nature of her departure is debated in the legends. Some say she was fully willing, swept away by Paris's charm and Aphrodite's influence. Others suggest she was abducted or forced. Regardless, Helen left Sparta with Paris, taking a considerable amount of Menelaus's treasure, and sailed for Troy. This act, the abduction or elopement of Menelaus's wife and the theft of his wealth, was a profound and unforgivable insult to Menelaus, to his honor, and to all of Greece. Menelaus, upon his return, was shattered and enraged. The violation of hospitality, the theft of his wife, and the immense dishonor demanded retribution. He appealed to his brother Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae, and together they rallied the other Greek kings and heroes. Bound by an ancient oath, the oath of Tyndareus, taken by all of Helen's former suitors to defend her chosen husband, the Greek forces amassed the largest fleet and army ever seen, setting sail for Troy. This marked the beginning of the Trojan War, a conflict that lasted for 10 long years and involved the greatest heroes of the age, both mortal and immortal. The rivalry between Paris and Menelaus was now not just a personal matter, but the catalyst for a grand, devastating war. It pitted 2 civilizations against each other. Paris, though not as formidable a warrior as some of his Trojan brothers like Hector, was responsible for the entire conflict. Menelaus, driven by a deep desire to reclaim his wife and restore his honor, fought tirelessly throughout the war. Their rivalry culminated in a direct confrontation on the battlefield. Early in the war, during a lull in the fighting, Paris and Menelaus agreed to a single duel. The outcome of this duel, they hoped, would decide the entire war. The winner would take Helen, and the war would end. Paris, not as skilled a fighter as Menelaus, was nearly defeated. Menelaus, enraged, dragged Paris by his helmet, intent on killing him. However, Aphrodite, ever protective of Paris, intervened and spirited him away from the duel, saving his life and prolonging the war. This divine intervention only deepened the Greeks' frustration and cemented their resolve to sack Troy. The Trojan War raged on, consuming countless lives, including many of the greatest heroes of both sides, such as Hector, Achilles, and Ajax. The war was characterized by brutal sieges, epic duels, and immense suffering, all stemming from that initial act of romantic betrayal. Paris, despite his responsibility for the war, was often depicted as a somewhat effeminate figure, more lover than warrior. Yet he was also the one who, with an arrow guided by Apollo, delivered the fatal wound to the mighty Achilles. Ultimately, Paris himself met a deadly end. He was struck by a poisoned arrow from Philoctetes, a Greek warrior. The wound was incurable, and Paris died, bringing a temporary sense of grim satisfaction to the Greeks, but it did not end the war. Conflict concluded with the ingenious trick of the Trojan horse, leading to the complete destruction of Troy. Helen, after the fall of Troy, was eventually reunited with Menelaus. Their return journey was fraught with peril, but they ultimately made it back to Sparta, and in most versions of the legend, lived out their lives together, albeit with the scars of the war forever etched upon them. The rivalry between Paris and Menelaus for Helen was perhaps the single most atypical romantic rivalry in ancient literature, directly causing a decade of brutal warfare and the annihilation of a powerful city. The ancient Greek epics, later retold and devoured throughout the medieval world, notably Homer's Iliad and various later medieval romances and histories, paint a vivid picture of this rivalry, showing how personal desires and profound betrayals could unleash a cataclysmic, deadly war that shaped the destiny of entire civilizations. Number 1. Lancelot vs. King Arthur for Guinevere. This is arguably the most famous and devastating romantic rivalry in all of medieval legend, a love triangle that shattered the ideals of a perfect kingdom and led directly to its downfall. At its heart were three iconic figures: King Arthur, the noble and just ruler of Camelot; Queen Guinevere, his beautiful and beloved wife; and Sir Lancelot, Arthur's greatest knight, his most trusted friend, and the epitome of chivalry. Camelot, under King Arthur, was envisioned as a realm of peace, justice, and fellowship, embodied by the Round Table, where the finest knights of Christendom swore oaths of loyalty and pursued noble quests. Lancelot, a foreign prince adopted into Arthur's court, quickly rose to prominence. His unmatched skill in combat, his unwavering loyalty to Arthur in every battle, and his dedication to the chivalric code made him the most revered knight in the kingdom, often referred to as the best knight in the world. The seeds of tragedy were sown when Lancelot and Queen Guinevere developed a deep, forbidden love for each other. This was not a fleeting infatuation, but a profound, passionate bond that, despite their best efforts to resist or conceal it, grew stronger with each passing day. Guinevere was committed to Arthur, her king and husband, and Lancelot was bound by his sacred oath of loyalty to Arthur. Their affair was a betrayal of the highest order, a secret that threatened to unravel the very fabric of Camelot. For years, the affair remained a closely guarded secret, known only to a few trusted confidants. The lovers met in secret, their stolen moments fraught with the constant danger of discovery. This secret added a layer of profound tension to the court, as whispers and suspicions occasionally circulated. The pervasive presence of the affair, even when unspoken, created a subtle divide, undermining the absolute trust that was supposed to be the bedrock of Arthur's reign. The eventual exposure of the affair was orchestrated by knights who resented Lancelot's favored position or sought to undermine Arthur's authority, most notably Mordred, Arthur's treacherous son or nephew. They set a trap for Lancelot and Guinevere, ambushing them in the queen's chambers. Lancelot, ever the formidable warrior, fought his way out, killing several knights who were part of the ambush. This desperate escape inadvertently caused the deaths of Sir Gareth and Sir Gaheris, beloved brothers of Sir Gawain, one of Arthur's most loyal and powerful knights. The deaths of Gawain's brothers, even if unintentional, irrevocably changed the nature of the rivalry. Gawain, consumed by grief and a burning desire for vengeance, became Lancelot's fiercest enemy. He demanded that Arthur exact justice against Lancelot, forcing the king into an impossible position. Arthur loved Lancelot as a brother and relied on him as his most powerful defender. Yet Lancelot had committed a profound betrayal and caused the deaths of beloved knights, including his own nephews. Under pressure from Gawain and the laws of his kingdom, Arthur reluctantly condemned Guinevere to be burned at the stake for treason and adultery. Lancelot, in a desperate act of devotion, rescued Guinevere from her fiery fate, spiriting her away to his castle. This act was seen as an open rebellion against Arthur, plunging the kingdom into civil war. The shining ideal of the Round Table shattered into bitter factions, with loyalties divided between Arthur and Lancelot. Arthur, torn between his love for his queen, his duty as king, and his personal pain, pursued Lancelot. The war between them was not a conventional conflict. It was a civil war that pitted former friends and comrades against each other. Gawain, relentless in his pursuit of vengeance for his brothers, repeatedly challenged Lancelot to single combat. Lancelot, though always victorious, famously refused to kill Arthur, even when he had the chance, demonstrating his lingering loyalty and respect for his former king. While Arthur and Lancelot were locked in this devastating conflict across the English Channel, Mordred, taking advantage of the internal strife, usurped the throne of Britain, claiming Guinevere for himself and plunging the land into anarchy. Arthur was forced to return to confront Mordred, leading to the final apocalyptic Battle of Camelot. In this devastating conflict, Arthur was mortally wounded by Mordred, and Mordred himself was slain. The dream of Camelot died on that battlefield. Lancelot, arriving too late to save his beloved king and his kingdom, was left heartbroken. Guinevere retired to a convent, living out her days in penance. Lancelot also eventually became a hermit, living a life of religious devotion, tormented by his part in the destruction of everything he loved and respected. The rivalry between Lancelot and King Arthur, born from an undeniable illicit love for Guinevere, led to the collapse of the greatest kingdom of legend, the death of its king, and the end of an age of chivalry. The vast body of Arthurian romances, especially the French Vulgate cycle that became so popular in the High Middle Ages, and Sir Thomas Malory's monumental Le Morte d'Arthur, lays out the intricate tragedy, detailing how this ultimate betrayal caused the downfall of Camelot.